Hearing none, then motion carries. So our first item on the non-consent agenda this evening is a public hearing on the redirection of 2019 and 2022 construction levy proceeds and matching funds for adoption by resolution number 2345. The board did receive a presentation related to the recommendation to redirect levy funds, changing from the construction of an additional elementary school on the Redmond Elementary campus to remodel or rebuild and enlarge Norman Rockwell Elementary. At this time, I will open a public hearing that has been authorized by the board and not required by law for the redirection of 2019 and 2022 construction levy proceeds and matching funds for adoption by resolution. To begin with, I would like to ask our board superintendent, our school superintendent, to provide the SIT recommendation on this.
Typically, the SIT rec is read prior to board action, but I'd be happy to do that prior to the hearing just so that we're all on the same page.
That would be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. And so if we can pull the situation recommendation up for public viewing as well. In December 2018, the board passed resolution 2259 authorizing a special election on April 23, 2019 in order to propose a $120 million six-year capital construction levy. The 2019 six-year capital construction levy proceeds were to be used to address critical capacity needs by providing additions to 5 schools and district-wide safety and security upgrades. All projects funded with the 2019 construction levy have opened, with one remaining core space project to be opened in the fall of 2023. The district currently estimates the project revenues, including levy proceeds, state construction assistance funds, also referred to as SCAP, impact fees and interest earnings will exceed the cost of the completed projects by approximately $17.2 million. In October of 2021, the board passed Resolution 2321 authorizing a special election on February 8, 2022, in order to propose a $295 million six-year capital construction levy. The levy proceeds were to be used to complete the first phase of projects in the district's Building Excellence Plan. The projects included additions to 3 middle schools, new elementary capacity on the Redmond Elementary campus, new high school capacity in the Lake Washington, Redmond, and Eastlake areas, acquiring property, and other capital projects. The six-year levy election passed, and the district is currently collecting the proceeds in calendar years 2023 through 2028. Planning for the 2022 construction levy began in 2019 and was finalized in 2021. Since the 2022 construction levy was passed, enrollment in the Redmond area elementary schools is lower than projected, and the overall enrollment forecast is reduced. The current need for a new school of 550 students has changed. The recommendation is to repurpose levy funds by removing the new elementary school on the Redmond Elementary campus project and to replace it with a remodel or rebuild and enlarge Rockwell Elementary School project. District staff shared information regarding the recommendation at the March 6 study session and will present information tonight at this meeting. The rationale for the recommendation is as follows. Due to the change in overall enrollment projections, the current need for a new school of 550 students has changed. Second, the Facility Advisory Committee recommend the district continue to address aging facilities and increase capacity by rebuilding and enlarging aging schools. Next, rebuilding Rockwell Elementary will address an aging facility as part of our long-term goals. This also addresses the aging facility need at a lower cost by building it now rather than in Phase 3, which the Building Excellence Plan currently has it planned. It reduces the need for near-term life cycle upgrades at an aging facility. It adds 242 permanent capacity to an area that is projected to grow. It reduces reliance on portable classrooms and allows for future planning and consideration on the Redmond Elementary campus. While the original resolution allows funds to be used on any capital project, given the elimination of one project and replacing it with another, this is being brought to the board for action. A presentation was provided at the March 27, 2023 board meeting. The proposed resolution is attached in board docs. The resolution authorizes the 2019 and 2022 capital construction levy proceeds and SCAP funds to be redirected so that they may also be used for capital construction projects to serve the district's aging facilities and capacity needs. These include remodel or rebuild and enlarge projects for aging schools, facility additions, and other capacity projects including portables, upgrades to classrooms, future bond and levy planning, internal building modifications, and property acquisition. That's the situation that I present the board this evening, with a recommendation that the Board of Directors adopts Resolution 2345, redirecting 2019 and 2022 construction levy proceeds and matching funds as presented.
Thank you. And so at this time, I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing for the redirection of 2019 and 2022 construction levy proceeds and matching funds for adoption by resolution number 2345. Each individual interested in providing testimony will be provided with 3 minutes. I do have one individual who is currently signed up, and then I will ask if there's others in the audience as well. So the first person I'd like to have come is Mike Nelson. And when you come forward, if you could please provide your name, that would be great. And then your testimony, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure, my name is Mike Nelson. Dr. Holman, thanks for the email. Board, thanks for having me here today. Good evening, my name is Mike Nelson. I'm a parent of 3 Lake Washington School District students and an alumnus myself. I attended Frost, Kamiakin, and Juanita and graduated in '97. I'm an advocate for public school, and myself and my wife have had success in our professions with foundational public education, but my resume is irrelevant. My son attends Kamiakin. Kamiakin is essentially unchanged since my attendance in the very early 1990s, except for the fact that they removed the lockers. My 3 older siblings attended in the late 1980s, and my nephews attend as well. Kamiakin serves a diverse group of students, from people who receive public assistance to families that make way more than $1 million a year. It's amazing. Kamiakin was in questionable condition when I attended. It is in ill repair, and as I mentioned, nearly unchanged since my attendance starting in 1991. There are murals on the wall that my sisters painted during their attendance that are still there, and the district has not spared a can of paint for that place. And if you go drive through the loop, you look up and there's shingles falling off the side, and it smells exactly the same, and it's the same carpet as it was when I was there like 30 years ago. So back to my notes here. Its near-term life cycle upgrades are long overdue, and it is an aging facility and serves more students than an elementary serves. I don't have any problems with Norman Rockwell, but I went to Kamiakin, and I'm like, come on, we can do better. My son went to EAS. My older son went to EAS at Finn Hill. It's a fantastic facility, and it makes a difference. The kids that go to Kamiakin, they go there and they go, man. The kids that go to Finn Hill, they're like, I love this place. It's awesome. I see it. I see a difference. I'm here today to ask the board to please consider directing funds allocated for other elementary schools to go to Kamiakin. The community feels ignored and undervalued. Kamiakin is a dump, and it needs help. There is an actual dump in the back of Kamiakin. Somebody parks their boat trailer back there. It doesn't look like an educational facility, okay? A note, if you do direct those funds, don't take the field house down. That's a really valuable resource, and I think that destroying those things would be kind of silly. So, in summary, I went to Kamiakin. It's exactly the same as it was when I went there, including the dust on the cougar that's there. The lunchroom's the same. I broke my finger in the lunchroom. It's the same doors. It's the same locks. It's the same, I have memories there. And it's great to have a shared common experience with my kids, but it's really time to act, because all of the other schools in the district are amazing, and that one is not. So, that's it.
Thank you. So is there anyone else present who would like to address the board on this topic this evening? Please come forward to state your name, and you will have 3 minutes for your testimony.
Sure. I didn't really plan to speak. My name is Yvonne Klauer. Sorry for Kamiakin. I thought we were the only one who are in bad shape. I represent Alcott Elementary. I came today without notes. I didn't think I was going to talk. just to hear how things work. But our school is concerned, we have nine classrooms that are in portables and no lunchroom. Our children carry their lunch from the lunchroom through wind and weather, and we all know how nice our weather is most of the time of the year. Get to their classroom with soaked lunch. It's cold, even though it's hot lunch served. And they have to eat lunch in their lunchroom, in their classroom. Every class does that. They eat lunch in their classroom, which stretches the staff because supervision has to be in every classroom, which interferes with teachers' preparation time. IAs cover some of that, but we think that the teachers don't get the privacy to prepare their classes. They don't get the time to talk to families during their lunch break if they need to. So, yeah, again, I didn't really prepare. That's all I could think of very spontaneously. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to address the board on this topic this evening? All right, seeing no one, at this point, no additional individuals interested in providing testimony this evening, the public hearing is now closed. I want to thank you both for coming down and providing that. With that, we will now move on to the public hearing on the redirection of 2019 and 2022 construction levy proceeds and matching funds for adoption by resolution number 2345. You heard Dr. Holman provide the SITREC and recommendation. Are there any questions or clarifications in regards to the information that was presented? Director Stewart?
Could you review the population shift that affects Redmond Elementary? Everyone's seen the construction downtown, and I think that may be misleading. It was misleading to me until I heard the numbers the first time, but I think it would be great to refresh our memories on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so pre-pandemic, as we were looking at enrollment trends and patterns, and then even as recent as 3 years ago, Redmond Elementary was projected to be over 1,000 students within their attendance area at their school. And so given that, we put the building excellence plan together to consider placing a second elementary school on that campus to serve 550 schools. Well, over the next 3 years, and then this year, just in February of 2023, we received our most recent projections. It has declined each year, with the new current projection for the Redmond Elementary area to be 750 students. And so thinking about that need declining, we really thought it best to evaluate the situation to see, A, could we accomplish some of our long-term goals in another way, but also consider the capacity needs of the area. We also looked at some of the different elementaries that were feeding into middle schools. The Redmond Middle School feeder is one of the feeder patterns that is actually growing over the next 6, 7, 8 years, as opposed to some of our other feeder patterns that are actually declining. And so it is an area where we do need additional capacity, and so that's why bringing the recommendation to the board tonight. Can I also answer a question you didn't ask? Just on aging facilities. We have 5 schools right now that any one of those communities, staff members could come and say, we are the right school to rebuild, and they're right. Like that is a true statement. And so as we brought to the board last week, we will be bringing a recommendation for really construction in Lake Washington School District in the fall, as we are looking at our modified enrollment projections, because really we have been responding to rapid growth, where we're at a place where we're not responding to rapid growth any longer, but we can consider what are some of the other construction priorities and goals that we have as a district. And so I appreciate the comments tonight, and those community members are accurate in that we have 5 sites out of, 49 buildings that aren't up to our educational specification, which are the standards that we set for our buildings and the layouts and amenities for students. So I just wanted to put that in the room as well, that's accurate.
Third question I didn't ask. Could you list those schools for the folks in the audience?
I can. And so at the elementary level, we have Rockwell Elementary, Alcott, and Smith Elementary. And they're actually all the same footprint and all built within about 5 years of one another. And then our two aging middle schools, Kamaikan that was spoken about tonight, and Evergreen, built about this during that same time period as well.
Any other questions? Director Liberty, do you have a question? Oh, okay. So hearing no more questions, I will now entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2345, redirecting 2019 and 2022 construction levy proceeds and matching funds as presented.
Okay, second.
Been moved by Director Stewart and seconded by Director La Liberty to approve the resolution number 2345. I will now open it for discussion. Director La Liberty.
So I echo what Dr. Holman spoke to just a few minutes ago, and that is that now that conditions have changed, it's time for us as a district to change our plan. We've been over the last 8-10 years sort of adopting a triage approach to trying to solve our rapidly increasing enrollment through portables at times, through when we can put funds together, new schools or expansions to existing schools. Now that conditions have changed and enrollment is leveling off, we have a chance to shift to a more sustainable approach of renewing our existing facilities, and also with this just a sustainable funding plan for that as well. So I view this as the first step in that, and with the additional work to re-looking at our building excellence plan over the summer and into the fall. So I am supportive of this resolution and the shifting of funds, and will be voting to approve.
Director Carlson, then Director Stewart.
I'm embarrassed to admit that there's one last piece of data that I'd like Dr. Holman to give us, and that's the relative cost of rebuilding an elementary versus rebuilding a middle school.
So I'm going to give you what I believe is correct, and if I'm wrong, Associate Superintendent Barbara Posthumus will come up. As we're projecting the cost of Rockwell Elementary, it will come in right around $80 million. The cost of rebuilding a middle school would come in around $130 to $140 million.
Thank you. And which brings two statements to mind. The first is, oh my God, after 16 years on the board, the cost of even an elementary has gone up substantially. So this is something where I agree with the statement that it is important to use these funds now before things inflate even further for constructing something else. As far as the statements that were brought to the board this evening, and actually a number of the statements that were provided as written comments, it is possible for all of these to be true. There are a number of facilities that are, we are no longer at the point where the facilities that are, Juanita broke my heart because it was the first time that something younger than me was deemed obsolete. But this is still true for each of the buildings that is under consideration in Phase 3. So I appreciate the challenges that we face, and the rationale behind focusing on Rockwell now as the most imminent challenge for the district is reasonable. So thank you.
Director Stewart.
And as I understand it, as the construction levies go forth in the future, we'll be looking at the other facilities in as rapid order as we can, as dollars allow, and hopefully no more population booms allow, correct?
Yes, that's what we'll bring to the board in early fall, is a recommendation. The building excellence plan, we had planned for a levy, which was passed in 2022. We had considered a bond measure in 2024. Our last conversation really was to rethink that plan, given the funding of it, but also the construction projects that were kind of lined up. Those were really lined up to address rapid enrollment growth. And we're not in that phase any longer. So we'll bring that new plan that really does look at our aging facilities and some of our other priorities as well. Thank you.
Director Choi, then Evan. Evan first, then Director Choi.
All right, only since I won't be here in the fall. I think that this resolution is a really excellent time for us to start putting into practice OE14, which is what we've obviously been workshopping for a couple years now. My concern, not really concern, my thought is just, we know Kamaikan Middle School serves an incredibly high proportion of low income and minority students comparative to other areas in the district. And so I think if we are trying to meet our expectations under OE14 of providing equitable services to all students, I think that factor really needs to come to the forefront. And I personally, obviously, I don't have all of the data in front of me. I would urge that be put to the top of the line, because I can tell you students are struggling in that school, and that school, what the image that school gives to its students who have already been told throughout most of their lives that they are secondary, is that they are going to continue to be secondary, and I think that needs to change.
Thank you. Director Choi.
I was going to say that I actually really appreciate Dr. Holman and his team coming forward and proposing this change. I know that there was a fair amount of work that had already gone into the plan for the new elementary school, and it would have been very easy to say, we're already down this path, we've already gotten the money, we have the approval, the public knows we need to finish this project, and those new enrollment projections just came in. We just received them in February. And to be able to look at the data and change your decision, I think shows how we are being very responsible with public dollars and trying to look at the data when we're making the decisions, and I actually really appreciate it.
Director Stewart.
I appreciate the fact that Kamaikan has a good percentage of Title I students. Could you also give us a breakdown of the free lunch, free and reduced lunch at the school we're going to be addressing?
Did you say the school that we're going to be addressing?
Rockwell.
Rockwell, okay. Mark, I don't have those data at my fingertips. It's less than Kamaikan.
But it is one of our Title I schools, am I correct?
Rockwell is not. The Title I schools that we have in the district right now are Frost and Muir, and those are the two elementary schools that actually feed into Kamaikan.
Okay.
And so Kamaikan has, I think, I believe the highest secondary free and reduced count that we have in the district for middle schools and high schools.
Thank you.
I'd just like to take the part that I appreciate as well. The voices coming forward, as we do have the 5 schools that have been aging. As I say, the 2014 bond in February, I went back and did a little research. When we had initially put that bond out, all 5 of those schools were on that bond for a rebuild nearly 10 years ago. And because of the growth that came in, we made a shift strategically, actually, in that year, that was the next bond, to really focus on growth, because we recognized the capacity that was coming in. And so I appreciate taking this opportunity as the data has now shifted and changed, similar to what Director Choi was saying, in that now is an opportunity to do some of that different analysis of where are we at now, and can we start to address these aging pieces and bring these schools up. I appreciate our student rep Evans' comment in ensuring that equity is a component as we look forward and doing those things and thinking about that as to how those things come forward. With that, I do support this resolution and would vote to approve, as it does address some of the capacity piece. We're kind of in a shifting piece. We're not quite sure where everything will go, because projections are currently projections. So I do think it provides an opportunity in which to utilize the funds to add growth add seats in the areas that is needed and meets those requirements very well. So I will vote to approve. Any other comments or discussions on? All right, seeing no more discussion, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, well, thank you, and again, appreciate those coming, and know that there will be more work going forward in regards to our capital facilities, as mentioned by the superintendent. In early fall is where the piece will be coming forward as to how we start looking at some of the capital facilities and what we do. Is that good? All right. Well, thank you. With that, we will now move on. If you remember, we had the monitoring report too. So our next item is the board summary for results to monitoring report. I am hoping you have all had the opportunity to read this, as in the summary. And so with that, I'll just quickly do if you could just scroll down a little further. So the board has said that in the summary currently that we are in agreement that reasonable progress has been made within results 2 with the noted exceptions within the report. We wanted to recognize the continued impact of COVID-19 upon the educational experience and overall results for our students. We also acknowledge the intense work and continuing efforts to ensure all students do succeed. Although we are not back to our pre-pandemic levels in regards to achievement, there appears to be a positive trend for most metrics, indicating improvement from past years. However, we can't overlook or too easily dismiss potential negative trends and must focus on improving these over the next few years. The other key sort of pieces is within this group, there's more around the commendations of the work that has happened, as well as some of the concerns that we have talked about. I think the key piece in the directions the board had sort of summarized was wanting to be able to focus on key areas within ELA and English Language Arts, to focus third grade reading as being a key primary time, and then be able to have the cohort component that follows that. And then math would be 5th and algebra by 8th grade was sort of the other two in looking at those. There was some discussion around what we do. We were able to have some more discussion around this at the extended board retreat, and there is some discussion of what to do with world language, social studies, and I'm blanking on the other two right now, I apologize, fine arts, and how those get carried out with operational expectations instructional program. This is sort of there. I will say that under recognizing in world language, we have the seal of biliteracy. I did add a piece of recommendation as potentially we consider that part of language and literacy, because world language is written as a category. So that's just something to pay attention to as you read through there, that is a potential direction that is in there as well. Any questions on what you read there or anything that you did not see? Hearing no discussion, then I will.
No question. I actually just very much appreciate that you caught my preference for trend lines in lieu of bar charts.
The goal here is to be as clear as we can in regards to the direction and commendations in the summary so that we can sort of start moving these things where we need to. There was some great work done. There's just more to do.
Would you entertain a motion?
I would happily entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval of the results to board summary as presented in our board packet.
Second.
Moved by Director Liberty and seconded by Director Choi to approve the summary as presented in the board packet. Any further discussion? Director Liberty.
Only one thing, and then that is, I just want to highlight it again, and I know we had this discussion at our board retreat. I look forward to it the next time that we monitor our results, to having the more focused monitoring on the areas we identified, which Director Bleasner spoke to just a little bit ago, focusing on ELA at third grade. I think we're going to be monitoring students taking algebra by 8th grade, and so I guess I have a question now as I'm saying this aloud. At our board retreat, we talked about having these more targeted metrics. Will that be reported? Will we have a meeting where that will be reported out to the community? I guess it would be, right? Before board, it would be a first reading of our revised results too, and they would be reported out like that. and then those would be adopted by the board at a second meeting. And so we should expect to be seeing that sometime in June, as I remember as we're discussing. All right, thank you for allowing me to refresh my recollection as I talked aloud there. Excellent, great. So yes, anyway, all that to say, I'm looking forward to the next time we monitor this and having the more focused metrics. I think that will improve our ability to monitor the performance of the district.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I will take a vote. All those in favor of approving the summary as presented, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, our next item on the agenda is Results 1, which is the mission of Lake Washington School District. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to Dr. Holman. This will be our first reading tonight, so you will hear the presentation and we'll have the discussion and piece around that, and then we will bring back a summary of that in regards to direction and things. So this will be the opportunity to ask those questions for clarification and sort of dig into this just a little bit. All right? With that, I hand it over to Dr. Holman.
Okay, and tonight Associate Superintendent Dale Cody is here to present Results 1. I believe you received the formal report maybe 6 weeks ago, and it's been on the agenda a few times, and thank you for adding it to the special meeting. This is the monitoring report that does provide the overall analysis of our district's mission and vision, looking at the ultimate data element of graduation, and then student readiness around some of the data that we do have available. This report is presented to you as in compliance for reasonable progress with noted exceptions. Dale will bring to you the report and provide some additional insights related to the data. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Dale to provide you the report.
Great, good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce and present to you the Results 1 monitoring report this evening. We're starting off with our four-year graduation rate for the class of 2022, and we note that it's 94.4%. This is the highest rate our district has reached. The following subgroups are at least 10 points below our target of 95%. Our Hispanic Latino students, our multilingual students, our students from low-income households, and our students receiving special education services. We do see positive annual trends for our Black African American students, our multilingual students, students from low-income households, and our students receiving special education services. This next chart shows that our graduation rates have been showing a slight increase over the past 10 years. This display shows how individual subgroups on-time graduation rates over time. We see an overall positive trend with our Black African American in the yellow line here, an overall positive trend over the past couple of years. However, Hispanic Latino students have not shown any overall increase for the past 6 years. And this shows our non-low-income students, which is a line on top, and our low-income students, which is a line below. It shows our low-income students increase, positive increase of their four-year graduation rate. Other factors might impact our low-income students, such as intersectionality of race and language and their potential impacts. For example, our low-income, if you were a low-income multilingual student graduating in 2022, you had a 76.5% graduation rate. If you were a low-income Hispanic Latino student, your graduation rate was at 75.5%, about the same. If you were low-income Hispanic Latino and multilingual, your graduation rate was 68% in 2022, indicating a compounding effect of intersectionality. On a positive note, our low-income Black student graduation rate has gone from 64.3% in 2013 to 72% in 2019 to 89% in 2022. The percent of students not dropping out during high school is at 96.8%. This is really just shows that we have a 3.2% dropout rate. And we track our students as best we can. We had 67 students in the class of 2022 that dropped out. A large number of these, 30 out of the 67, were classified as unknown. We didn't get any information from them. They didn't tell us their intent that they were leaving. Could not track any data on those. 27 out of the 67 were unconfirmed transfers. In other words, they intended to transfer to another school. We weren't able to confirm that. Another 10 students left to employment, lack of academic progress or attendance, personal choice, pursuit of a GED, or graduated after the state report was due. Students participating in multilingual program and Hispanic Latino students had the largest number of students dropping out. And the subgroups that have positive annual trends are our Black African American students, students receiving multilingual services, and students receiving special education services.
Dale, can you, I just want to make, you cited some data that wasn't on the slide. Will you go back to those data and just talk about, and just share that one more time? I want to make sure.
The low income? And
for the dropout. The dropout data that you shared. I think it was
Yep.
it was important data, and I want to make sure that we're...
Yeah, I breezed through that pretty quickly. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
So we think about 3.2% dropout rate. That meant 67 students for the class of 2022 did not drop out. Excuse me, did drop out. So of those 67, 30 of them were classified as unknown. We don't have any information. They just, for lack of a better phrase, disappeared. We didn't know where they ended up. 27 of those 67 were unconfirmed transfers. And what that means really is students intend, I'm leaving, I'm moving to, Edmonds, I'm going to transfer, or I'm going to move out of state, I'm going to transfer, and we weren't able to confirm those transfers. When students move, then the school that they end up transferring to then calls and asks for their information. They say, hey, we have Dale Cody, he's transferred to our school, will you please send us their information? That would be a confirmed transfer, then we'd be able to track that data and know. But 27 of them were unconfirmed. Another 10 left due to unemployment, lack of academic progress or attendance, personal choice, pursuit of GED, or graduated after the report was due. And that information is typically gathered by our counseling department and then shared with our data services. Dr. Holman, anything else on that slide?
No, and so I just, maybe I'll just remind the board of the graduation rates that you see are a cohort-based graduation rate. And so any student starting in Lake Washington School District as a freshman, they are then part of that cohort. There's nothing we can do about changing their year of graduation. Once a student starts in 9th grade, they are part of that cohort. Any student transferring in becomes part of that cohort of students whenever they transfer in. And part of the rules are if a student transfers out, there's an actual verification process that has to occur for us to verify where they went. And so when Dale says there's 30 unknown and 27 unconfirmed, that doesn't mean that there's 57 students that just dropped out of high school and we know about it. Particularly the 27 unconfirmed transfers. We were notified a student was transferring and for whatever reason weren't able to make that connection that they verifiably ended up in another high school. And so our teams are working to address both the data integrity and also then we have 10 students that actually dropped out of this class of 2022. Those are the students that we're actively doing outreach to, trying to get them re-engaged in our schools and our programs or a re-engagement program. So It's just great data. Thank you for sharing that. And it highlights kind of the multiple strands of data that we're tracking, but also the students that we're intentionally reaching out to who would be considered dropping out of high school.
Okay. Mark? Director Stewart?
How does this compare to our color districts, if you will, in the state overall?
say to our comparable districts?
Our collar districts, if you will, the ones surrounding us, or get away from me. Anyway, basically, the ones in our region that we usually compare ourselves to, as well as the state average, to be quite frank.
Right. So in our benchmarking district ranking, Director Stewart, we are at 4. If you look
Okay.
here to the right here, we're 4 in the comparable districts. This shows percent of students not dropping out and a slight increase over the past 10 years. For the past 2 years, most federal race ethnicity groups have either remained flat or increased slightly. There's still a gap between this green line is Hispanic Latino students, so there's still a gap here between other race and ethnicity groups. Dr. Holman spoke a little bit about this, but I think this display shows for the class of 2022, we had 2,070 students enter their 9th grade year. And so that's the cohort that we follow throughout the 4 years that they're in high school. Over the course of that time, we had 213 students transfer out. We had 225 students transfer in. As I spoke to rapidly and then slowed down a little bit ago, was 67 students dropped out, leaving 1,966 graduates and 49 of those students continuing their high school, to pursue their high school diploma. The 7-year graduation rate is at 96.5%, which is slightly below our target of 98. So most of these are in yellow, showing that we're approaching our target. There's one subgroup that's well below target, and those are our multilingual learners. And you'll notice on the right here that they also have a positive annual trend, along with our Black African American students, as well as our students from low-income households. This shows our 7-year graduation rate that's been relatively flat over the past 6 years, showing some slight increases and slight decreases over time. When we look at the percent of students enrolling in post-secondary institutions within 2 years, nationally, we've seen a decline in college enrollment. When we talk about post-secondary enrollment within 2 years of graduation, it continues to remain high for us in Lake Washington at 81.6%. This post-secondary enrollment only includes students that are pursuing education through 2 or 4-year colleges and universities. This is based on National Clearinghouse data, which tracks post-secondary enrollment. We don't have data on post-secondary pathways, such as going to the military. Here we see our subgroups that are well below target and have a negative annual trend, those being our Black African American students, Hispanic Latino students, students eligible for multilingual services, students from low-income households, as well as students receiving special education services. Last year, we launched a senior intent survey for the class of 2022. We had a 50% return rate. Of those that completed the survey, 82% of those said they were planning to attend a 4-year college or university. 8% said a 2-year community college or technical vocational school. 5% said they were taking a gap semester or a year. And 3% said they were going to be working. The final 2% were a variety of responses, including military, apprenticeship, and unsure. We're going to give the survey again this spring to the class of 2023 and provide some additional efforts to increase the response rate. Again, we had 50% of those response, and so our attempt is to continue to get increased data and more accurate data about where our students intend to go after high school. Even considering the decline in national data, we see a slight increase over time for our students in post-secondary institutions. So with the post-secondary enrollment remaining high, we're still seeing a gap. And the green, again, is our Hispanic Latino students. The yellow are our Black African American students, so we still see a gap there. We also see a level of recovery from our post-pandemic last couple of years here for these subgroups. Here, the percent of students completing at least one dual credit course with a B or higher. So 94.3% of graduates completed dual credit courses with a B or higher. So dual credit, again, as you know, are courses that include advanced placement, college in the high school, tech prep, Cambridge International Baccalaureate, or Running Start. We also know that studies show that students completing at least one dual credit course were more likely to graduate high school, enroll in college, persist through the first year of college, and earn their college degree. Here we see our subgroups below target. Those are our Black African American students, our Hispanic Latino students, our students eligible for multilingual services, as well as students from low-income households and students receiving special education services. 2 of these 5 target subgroups, low-income students and students receiving special education, are showing a positive annual trend. Here we see our subgroups with slight increases over time. This display also shows a gap between our Black African American and Latino student groups compared to other subgroups. The percent of ninth graders that earned credit for all courses was 87.9%. The ninth grade courses that had the most students without full credit for the 21-22 school year, right? So this data I'm going to share with you are those students that did not receive full credit in areas like Algebra 1, 123 students. English Language Arts had 91 students. Biology had 80 students, and World History had 47 students, and Health had 40 students. So the ninth grade courses that had the most students without full credit were those for 21-22. There are significant gaps in this indicator for Black African American students, Hispanic Latino, multilingual learners, students from low income households, and students receiving special education services. There are also positive annual trends for Black African American students, multilingual learner, and students receiving special education services. Graphic shows significant gaps between our Black African American and Hispanic Latino students, again, showing a level of recovery for these 2 subgroups. Next is the percent of 10th graders that met an evidence-based reading and writing college and career readiness benchmark, the PSAT, as was 85.4%, showing a slight positive annual trend. Nationally, the percent that met this benchmark was 61%. Here we see the subgroups below benchmark with positive annual trends for our Black African American, multilingual learners, and students receiving special education services. Looking at our subgroups, we see a gap between our Black African American and Hispanic Latino students from other subgroups. This graphic also shows a positive trend for our Black African American students.
Dale, can I just also point out, in the report we didn't highlight this, and I think that's probably why you didn't indicate it, but our Asian students scoring at 93.6 actually have an annual trend of positive 1.1, which is, I would say, relatively significant given the high rate of proficiency.
Thank you. That wasn't my notes, Dr. Holman, and I omitted that, so thank you. I went back to that slide to show that here, as well as our Gender X students also had their annual trend as a low N. 10th graders that met the national benchmark was 64%, 64.3%, 64%. Nationally, the percentage of students that met math was 36%. Here we see all subgroups below benchmark, except our Asian students at 86%, and again, our Gender X students at 85.7%. But we do see a positive annual trend for our Black African American students and our multilingual students. One of the things just to remember is this data was taken really a year and a half ago from the 21-22 school year. The previous year was when we were in remote instruction, and we had continued interruptions for staff attendance and other pandemic challenges. that impacted education, and still many of our student subgroups were significantly above the national average in reading, writing, and math. So we know that results 1 and results 2 provide an overall assessment of the academic and interpersonal skills and attributes for our students. These are in service of the results 1, which, as Dr. Holman mentioned at the beginning, is really the primary mission of our district and district mission and vision.
All right, then I'm going to open it up to any questions from the board. Director LaLiberty.
Sorry, President Bleasner, are you entertaining comments as well now on the report, or just questions? I'm fine with either.
I would like to start with questions for any clarification on things and those components.
Okay, thank you.
Just one clarification question. I appreciate the graphs that have been provided, but the time scale, the number of years, varies significantly between measures. Is that so? For the 7-year graduation rate, we got 4 years of data. For the 4-year graduation rate, we got 10 years of data. Is that because some of these weren't available prior to?
Correct. The 7-year graduation rate just became available through OSPI within the last handful of years. And so if there's 4 years of data, that's why.
I'm going to have more things to say about this as observations, but I just wanted to clarify that that was why. Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Choi.
I guess it's a question. I think there's maybe a data anomaly or maybe a story I'm missing, but for percent of graduates completing at least one dual credit course with a B or higher, with our Black African American students in 2020, we've got a huge peak. I was just kind of curious, is there an explanation for this?
So during the pandemic, we had some decisions to make around grading when we went into full remote for the first period of time. And so we essentially paused instruction. We didn't do remote the way we did in the, and forgive me if I'm getting my years incorrect, but for the 2020-2021 school year, that's when we started in a full remote setting. The end of the 2019-2020 school year, we went into remote where students were doing asynchronous learning for the majority of the spring, with some connections to teachers. And so we also then had to figure out, okay, what do we do with grading? Because everything has changed. And so after a long evaluation of what to do, it was decided that we would provide an A or an N for students, an N allowing them to remediate that and receive the credit if they truly did fail the course, but trying to use a typical grading scale, a percent scale, anything that related to an academic grade, it really wasn't valid. And so that's why you see the spike there.
But it's only for one group of
Yes,
students?
and so we went back to a more traditional grading pattern in the 2020-21 school year. And so that was just for the end of the 2019-2020 school year.
Everybody get 96s.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding, but it's only one subgroup of student and
That saw the
ethnicity.
spike.
Yeah.
I see. I see.
Because you would expect all of the students to
Right.
be at a spike. So I was just curious if it's potentially an anomaly in the data, like is it wrong data?
Or an error in the data.
Yeah.
We'll check
Or is there something different going on with just the
We can check,
students
but I
that
see
one
what you're
year?
saying.
Yeah.
This spike right here, and then you have relatively flat, yeah. We can look into that.
Any other questions? If not, I have some. Okay. So I'll go this way so I don't have to keep turning my neck. Okay, so a question I had around the 4 years and the 7 years and the not dropping out. We don't have this list as an indicator, but have we done any looking at the pathways chosen for graduation as those were put in just recently as to the different ways in which you are able to meet those requirements, be it through passing the SBA, be it through passing ACT, and can we get that data?
I believe we can get that data. We still are under the waiver rules, and so not all students are graduating using the pathways at this point. But yes, we can pull those data.
That would be great, because I just know that one of the components we were initially talking about at one point was being sure that those pathways are being equitably applied, honestly, in many ways, and so that we're not tracking students. So being able to see how that's going, because I'd be interested as we play through these numbers. Also noted that students with low income have the highest graduation ever, and wonder how that fits with the academic information provided prior that demonstrated additional challenges for this student group to meet standards. So I was just trying to see that disconnect in that data. And so, are there different pathways being utilized? Are there activities in which we're doing in which to go forward?
So one of the things that we've implemented over the last 4-5 years is credit retrieval, where students that fail a course receive an N. They work with a teacher to identify what are the components within that course that they failed. If they just failed the entire course, they need to retake it. But there are students that they failed a final project, or they failed, one component that brought them to a point of failure. Well, we can work with them, retrieve that credit, because they've done the seat time, which is part of the board policy. Then they also have to demonstrate the level of proficiency required to attain that credit. And so we have credit retrieval at all of our high schools that really do focus on the individual student's need in relation to a course that they failed or received an N in.
Do you know when that was implemented?
It was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, follow-up
Do you
question?
have some numbers as to the number of students who take advantage of the credit retrieval program, whether it's overall or be nice if they're broken down by subgroups?
I know we do have those data. I remember this last summer, Kelly Pease shared with me the number of credits that were retrieved through our summer credit retrieval, and we can pull those data as well.
Great.
Okay, so another question I have for you. I have a whole list, sorry. I was interested you made the comment that in the written piece about students who were within Lake Washington School District, starting in 9th grade, through their senior year, you had a 95.6% graduation rate. If they had come into our system during that time frame, it was about 81.3. It's in the written part of your report, is what I remember. I was interested in how did that break out by student group, and also how you use that information in which to potentially serve those students and families potentially differently in our high schools. So I think that was sort of the question that came out.
So, President Bleason, I want to make sure I understand your question. And so I'm going back to my notes to make sure that I can accurately either respond or get the data that you're asking for. So you had mentioned, was it around this particular display that's up on the screen here, or no?
No, you actually didn't have a table on this data. It was all written.
And so I think there's a couple of things. One, we haven't brought those data tonight. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that I've seen that data set, but yes, we could pull those data. It's interesting that you asked that question because Tim Krieger actually did some work around incoming transfer students. He did some interviews with students to understand their experience, their family's experience as they were transferring in, and some of the questions that families and students still had, their experiences, while positive with the school, didn't always fully provide what they needed to understand how do they transition, where are they in relation to either Washington State or for some, the U.S. educational system, and how they're falling into being on track or not on track to graduate. And so Tim did some work around that. I don't have an outcome from that work, but he did do a look at that experience as we're working with our schools and our counselors. Dale,
Yes.
I don't know if you have any additional information around that work.
No, but I think that would be interesting data to provide folks. That we look at these transfers in and their success to be able to graduate on time as compared to others who start. There's some data there that suggests that maybe focusing in on our transfer students and their experience in transitioning in and supporting their academics over the course of however much time that they have left would be an area that I think for us to focus on as it relates to our dropout rates.
Another data element that may be interesting to pull within that, our dropouts, were those students that started in 9th grade, or did students drop out as transfers to Lake Washington? And that could also give us, as we think about a 94.4% graduation rate, it really is starting to individualize supports for students. And these are the ways that we start thinking about how do we address the needs of kind of unique individuals and populations given their circumstances. So, thank you.
Thank you. Glad to hear that's already being looked at. We're not done yet, Dale. Sorry. Have a few more. I had the report for a few weeks. Gave me a little more opportunity to dig into it.
Indeed.
Looking at the post-secondary. So actually, as I was trying to walk through the different components, and so in the post-secondary piece, it really hasn't changed much over the past 8 years. In all reality, right? It's pretty level and pretty high. It'd be interesting to know who the 1 in 5 who are not enrolled within 2 years. Who are those students and what potential options? Appreciated the providing of the survey data that was being done in the exit survey. And that showed about 90% of our students were looking at post-secondary and about 80% is enrolls, is sort of it. So there's a piece there that disappears. And so the question is, are there pieces that we need to do? What are those barriers to post-secondary? And is there anything we can do in the schools to help support? I think FAFSA is definitely a big piece of the work, WAFSA and FAFSA. I had a question about College Bound. And I know there's an automatic enrollment now into College Bound in 8th grade. If you meet the requirements, at least that's what I believe I read. And if so, there's the additional requirements as you go through the system. Right? So you have to apply for FAFSA, and then that can get you access to the scholarship. Are we still providing concentrated support for those students in being able to access that? Just thinking of that as a potential barrier as we go through that. And I don't know if that's work that we're doing at this point.
We certainly should and can look back into that because you're right that students that are signed up for College Bound, those are barriers. So they get through high school, but yet it would be interesting to see how many actually access the opportunity to attend college and what would those barriers be. So I can look into what our College Bound sign-up data is and see if we can track that throughout their high school.
Thanks.
Can we also look into, President Bleasner said the term automatic enrollment into College Bound? That would be a new element for me.
Thought I Googled it and found that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, we'll look into that too. I think another aspect for first-generation college students, it's kind of fascinating as we think about wanting our students to experience post-secondary that's meaningful for them, and what we know is that being that first individual from your family to go to college, there are just natural barriers to be able to achieve that. And so continuing to think about what is our role in supporting families through that. It isn't just the individual student, it's truly supporting the family through that and thinking about how we can do that and continue to do that. I know all of the work our schools are doing around FAFSA nights, doing supports in multiple languages, in particular knowing a couple of our high schools that actually hold evenings in Spanish. It is not spoken in English, not translated in any other language. It is specifically for Spanish-speaking family. Things like that provide a different level of access and can provide information for the whole family around the benefits of things like the College Bound Scholarship. What is the information that you need? How's that information used? Because I know that's at times a fear for some families, and so really helping them walk through that is important.
So building on that, knowing there's a percentage of our students who do not pursue post-secondary for a variety of reasons, how do we support our students who are not pursuing a post-secondary degree through high school? And do we know anything about those students? So in the sense of those who are pursuing apprenticeship or other options out there in which to do things. It's that piece. I know we don't have the data here, and I think your survey is starting to get to that. My question would then just be, how well are we ensuring that we support those efforts and those things going for students to be able to access those? Similar to FAFSA, right?
So to your point, we don't have those data yet. I think our, the data that you're seeing here, if we're in 20, so this is 20 graduates from the year, 2020, there we go. And so these are not our current graduates that took the survey. And so kind of doing some matching with what are students saying about their plans post-secondary, and can we actually match those? So how valid are the data that our students are telling us at the end of their senior year with what actually happens 2 years later? And then doing a better job of tracking all of those different post-secondary experiences that currently there isn't a data set that we have access to, because all of these data are reported, I believe it's through the College Board. And so, but your question around other types of experiences, for our students that are connected in, let's say, a career and technical ed program at WANEC, those types that lead into an industry experience, the likelihood of them having access to really a post-secondary experience that leads to work is much greater than a student that isn't connected in those areas. And I say that because we don't have, at this point, additional pathways for students that aren't working within our career and technical education, not connected to WANEC, to really have those as viable options. So it's, many of those students are connected, but I'm not sure I would say outside of those that we have those pathways well articulated.
It's a bit of an autopsy as well, right? Because they've left, or the National Clearinghouse College Board gives us data to say where your graduates from a couple years ago landed. Our senior intent survey is given in the spring, so that's also a look back. So maybe there's some data, President Bleasner, when you asked about just pathways and thinking about how can we support them early on in their journey through high school and whatever pathways that they're choosing. Because again, we have some that I know exactly where they want to go, and then there's others who we don't really know until after they leave. So how do we capture those students, know what their interests are, and support them in the multiple pathways that might lead them beyond high school to be successful?
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so dual credit now was my next question. I'd be interested to know how we split out by type of dual credit. AP, Cambridge, college and high school, Running Start. Tech Prep, I think, was the other one that was listed. And it was interesting is you spoke about taking a dual credit course, aligning with post-secondary. As I look at the data, the same subgroups within the dual credit course is similar to the same data of who's accessing or not post-secondary. I know those are different groups, I get that, but we have pretty consistent trends across the board that this is sort of an early on piece. So that's a piece I'm interested to learn a little more about with dual credit. There's more going on there that I'm not sure we quite capture as well as we could we still see those same groups, and is there more that we can do there to support students within the classroom if they're taking a dual credit course, and being able to do that in order to be able to raise their success within that environment. Does that make sense? I'm not sure that was a question. I probably moved to commentary there, didn't I? Probably have for a lot of this.
Cautiously trying not to offend Director Carlson, would a pie chart be the best way to display that? So thinking about our student groups and their access to various types of dual credit. Is that the data, or is it kind of at the aggregate level, how much dual credit would we, of these 94%, how many students are accessing AP?
Yes, I'd be interested to see that by subgroup as well.
Okay.
And then the 9th grade credit attempted, just the question that came out of there was, it was interesting to learn the reason, it would be interesting to learn the reason for not passing the course. And you sort of touched on that with credit retrieval and what's going on there and how you support that side of it. Because this is great. You see a lot of, knowing that 9th grade is a key thing and moving that. Do you know how many of these was only 1 credit, a half credit that they lost? It was 3 credits. I was just curious as to, is it a group of students, it's a significant, or is it a smaller piece? I was also intrigued with Algebra 1 in 9th grade being the largest number of not doing, which makes, okay, so what additional supports do we provide within that environment to help ensure that those students succeed?
I'm sure we can get the data around whether it's 1 credit, half a credit, how many were they short. And then I don't know, President Bleaser, if you had a specific question about algebra, is it just around what supports are we providing students in the areas that we've identified that they're struggling most in?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, right? I sit there and think, were they already struggling with math prior to Algebra 1? And that could potentially be true. And so are there foundational pieces that are potentially missing that we haven't dove into as we move into the theoretical shifting in that environment? So that's just, it was one of those things that captured me. Just knowing that algebra is that foundational piece for a lot of our sciences, right, for a lot of those components. So just trying to understand that a little more.
And as you know, elementary's doing great work around math and new math adoption that leads into the middle school. And there's some pathways work that Dr. Rose and others are working on, knowing that pathway is so critical, and trying to get them the skills to be able to access algebra much sooner than 9th grade, as it is in this case. And so I won't speculate on whether these students are strong math students or not, but being in 9th grade then limits a little bit of their access by the time they're senior.
Thank you.
Is your question around 9th grade credit, is it about the number of credits, or is it the number of students that are credit deficit by 1, 2, 3?
Number of students. Those are all my questions. I know I have many more comments, but those are questions. So happy to open to additional comments or questions from the board. Director Stewart.
I appreciate the fact that the outreach to families, students of families that have never attended college or graduated college. As one of those students, it's imperative, really, to get to the family as early as possible, start working with them, even elementary level, to be quite frank, to let them know that this is not out of reach for their student, that don't put a barrier in front of yourself or your son or daughter because of income, of language barriers, because we want to work with you, we will work with you, and it's important to instill. My grandfather had to drop out of school at 8th grade, and he was determined I was going to go through college. And it was his push, along with a few others, but in particular his, that put me through college. Not necessarily financially, but it's the idea that it was I knew that he was in the corner. And I think that having families in the same respect early on, because that was instilled in me grade school on. I would love to see if we could, I don't know how we would do it, but I'd love to be able to see us expand that program into earlier years, just so they understand, look, that door isn't closed yet. And by ninth grade, the family may have already had a mindset that, okay, this isn't going to happen. But if they can see it earlier, they could. The second observation I had was the late graduation. One of the most heart-rendering graduation ceremonies we have is in August, when we have our students who missed graduating by that much. And they put out that extra effort. Usually it's about a half a dozen-ish. It'd be great if we could improve that number, but it is so, to see the families, especially. I mean, if Pride could expand a room, this room would have exploded, because it's amazing how important that is to their families and to the students, to be quite frank. And I really applaud this district for recognizing those students and not letting them kind of slip through the cracks like so much steam.
Director Carlson?
Okay, so now we're into comments, and I want to talk about trends. So can we go back to the four-year graduation rate table? First one you showed. That's all right. So here, this table is in the same structure as all of the other tables in this report, and it gives a column labeled annual trend. Now, an annual trend, this is basically the change from last year, theoretically. So you can see for the all group, it's 94.4 was our graduation rate, and a nominal annual trend of plus 0.3. Can you go forward one slide? Okay, so last year we were at 93.1%, and this year we're 94.4%. That's 1.3%, not 0.3%. So the annual trend data in the table is wrong if these are the right data from last year. Now, I'm just pointing this out as the danger of giving me data in two different formats. If they're not consistent with each other, then one of those formats used the wrong data. I actually believe the table, the graph, more than I believe the table. Particularly if you go back to the table, it had a 9% annual trend for students eligible for multilingual, 77.9 as plus 9. If you look at the actual graph for that, there is never in the last 10 years a data point that's at 68.9. So that 0.9 is from something else, that plus 9. That is not my big point. My big point is that annual trends in these tables are almost meaningless. So let's look at a trend that is real. Go forward one slide now. The trend here from last year to this year of 93.1 to 94.4 is not a real trend, because the previous year was 94.2 down to 93.1. Big whoop. If I'm going to give you credit for improving this year, I had to punish you for failing last year. But if you look at the 10-year trend, this is real. 88, 90, 92. We've gone up by about 5% over the course of the decade. That's a big deal. But you don't see it in 1 year. Therefore, this annual trend column in these tables is worse than useless. It's flagging something as if it might be important, when I almost guarantee you it is never important. And this are all students. Here, this is the largest sample we've got. It's the most stable data. It's going to be something where a plus or minus 5% over the course of a decade is a very real plus 5%. Now, what's fascinating about this, let's see, which piece are we going to do first? First, we're going to go forward to four-year grad rates low income. So I think 3 slides. Sorry, it was 2 slides. So here we got slightly less data. Instead of starting at 2013 on the left, it's starting at 2016. And 2013 actually helped anchor the all students numbers. I don't know exactly how or why, but what happens is it's not as obvious that there's a trend. But here, to me, the question is the gap getting smaller? Year on year, I can't say much. I want it to be, but I can't say it's consistently getting smaller. And so this is the long-term vision of the district. Are we getting better? Yes. Importantly, we are getting better overall. It's not just the non-low income students. The gap isn't getting dramatically wider. It's all students are rising, but we haven't closed the gap. Now, the interesting thing from these data, so now let's go to the 7-year grad rates. And go ahead and go to the all students graph. So one more slide. This is fascinating to me. It's flat. We're improving our 4-year grad rate. We're not moving the needle at all on the 7-year grad rate. And I don't actually have much problem with not moving the needle at all on the 7-year grad rate. We are getting more kids, significantly more kids, to graduate on time than in the retrieval options that have historically existed. Again, this is good news to me. I'm not going to penalize the district for having flat numbers here, but comparing this number against our 4-year rate, that's huge. We've moved the 4-year rate. We are closing that gap a lot. We're doing better by our students overall. And so the bad news in this is that the 4-year grad rate overall is just about the only number that I can see in these graphs where I'm absolutely certain there is a significant positive trend. Everything else bounces around. And in most cases, it bounces around so dramatically that it's almost impossible to disentangle it from, I mean, we can give you credit for going up by 5% in black students and then penalize you by going down 12% the next year. But it's plus or minus 12% because it's 39 kids. And changing one kid is moving you by something on the order of, what's 39, so 2.5%. So it's those numbers just become, the trends on the individual subsets don't mean much. And that's the bad news. I want the trends to be important. I want to be able to look at these things and declare victory. The problem is for most of our subsets, they're too small for us to meaningfully interpret the trend as positive or negative without 10, 12 years of data. And that's hard to get. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm just expressing an overall frustration with the fact that this is hard work. To meaningfully move the district requires a tremendous amount of effort, and it moves the iceberg very gingerly, very slowly over time. I don't believe it is possible for us from this R1 data to say anything about how did we do better than last year. The only thing that was particularly surprising to me here was that there wasn't a crater in 21 because of those are the kids who started being reassessed senior year as they're about to graduate, were grading again, and it didn't take them out. So that was a pleasant surprise that there isn't a divot visible in these data. But overall, I'm sorry to say that I don't believe that the annual trends matter in any of the tables you gave us. And that's just because they bounce. They really do bounce one year to the next, and it's not by so much that I'm convinced that we have a positive slope to the overall fit.
I was just going to.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that helps.
Don't go away.
That would help.
I want to
Yeah.
make sure what I'm saying
Yeah.
is correct. Is that because when I asked about that, it's they take I think it's over 4 years. They take the set of data and draw the best fit line of that data to get the annual trend.
Thank you for that. Now,
This is the slope of that. Thank you, Scott.
it's not a rolling average. You're getting the slope from 4 data points, which I would tell you statistically, there's only one way to do it worse, and that's to do it from 3 data points, because the middle 2 data points don't matter. It was the first and the last data point. Those are the 2 that have influence on your slope. So those 2 middle data points won't change the slope meaningfully. Consequently, what you're getting is a trend between now and 3 years ago. That's better than 1 year ago. It's still not something that I look at and say, hey, this means a lot. Mostly because when you put those data into, let's say it's Excel, even in Excel, it will give you not only the slope of the line, but the error on that slope. And you've got a slope that's plus 0.3 and the plus or minus 9, it doesn't mean much. and I'm almost certain that none of these numbers mean a lot. I'm sorry. I want them to mean more than they can. But that's part of the thing of it's hard. We are a high-performing district. We are trying to become an even better district. It is hard to move the needle dramatically in just a couple of years. But like I said, just looking at this overall, our 4-year grad rate in the last 10 years has moved dramatically. I mean, it's basically halved the number of kids not graduating on time. And that's a big deal, going from 10% to 5%. But it takes 10 years to be confident that we're seeing that number. Thanks.
Can I highlight one other thing from that, other positive from that 4-year graduation rate? Is that when I look at the majority of our subgroups over that 6-year trend, the gaps are closing as well. For many, even I would even say most. Well, when I look, okay, fair enough. When I look at the chart, the graphs that are in the trend lines that are in our packet, I see over. Yes, there are fluctuations year by year, but when I look at the overall trend, I do see it closing among our subgroups. So that reflects not only. That reflects an improvement in district performance, and also reflects, an interest that this board has had over that time of closing our systems, the gaps that we see in our system from our system's performance with respect to different subgroups. So I do want to highlight that as something that I think is meaningful and positive and worth highlighting. An area of, and may I continue, President Blizner? Thank you. An area of focus for me when I look at this data, an area of focus for improvement would be the gaps that we see for students that are enrolling in post-secondary education after 2 years. For me, the overall rate is less meaningful than the gaps we see between groups. I think the overall rate can be a function of society changes, interests of students change, the economy changes. And so that can, we know overall in the country, less students are enrolling in post-secondary. We also know that access to post-secondary education and completion of post-secondary education is a big determinant on your future income, the careers that are available to you. And so I think it's incumbent on us as a district to work really hard to close those gaps so as not to further stratify our society. I don't want our district to be a party to that. So to me, that's a continued focus, and I appreciate Director Blizner highlighting in her questions/comments that the data for enrollment in post-secondary education the gaps that we see appear to align very closely with the gaps that we see for students that are achieving a B or better in a dual credit course. To me, I don't know. I'm not a data scientist, but to me that tells me something, that the fact that those are correlated, that it appears to be meaningful, and also tells a good story that we see that when we do provide access to students to achieve in a dual credit program in our schools, they're more it appears to me that they would be more likely to enroll in post-secondary education. So I appreciate all the good work there. To me, that's something when I think about our future monitoring in future years, that's something I will have continued focus on. So I think those are all of my comments for now.
John, how closely, basically all the wanted classes are driven, of course, by enrollment, what's popular, what's trending. How closely, though, do we work with the trade unions to find out what trades need more apprenticeships filled? Because that might help us address that one niche of the kids going into apprenticeships. I don't know how many of them are really aware of apprenticeships unless their family are in the trades. and what the route is, especially since you're not allowed to start an apprenticeship till you're 18 in this state. So if there is some way that we could work in conjunction with them to say, oh, here's where it gaps, here's where we really need new apprentices, and here's where we're holding our own, and they're going to enter an apprenticeship that's going to be a little crowded. See where I'm going?
I'd go back to my earlier comments around our students that are kind of tracking in CTE, right? Like that are participating in CTE. They are connected with industry, meaning they know where apprenticeships are. They have access to those, but we don't have, for students that aren't engaged in that, we don't really have a pathway to connect them. But I would also point to our WANIC program that actually worked with one of our local trades unions. We have a construction program in the Bellevue School District, which is part of our WANIC consortium, where students participate in their WANIC course, construction, 3 credits, about half a day every day. And we actually have a memo of understanding with the union around their work because they are doing union labor. And one of the things the union said was, well, if these students are going to be doing union labor, they also need to receive compensation for that. So we actually have high school students earning credit, receiving on-the-job skills. There's because of this connection with the union and the memo of understanding, there's that piece as well. So I would say some very good connections, but I would say we're in the fledgling stage of where we want to be because the varied interests of our students is vast, and making those meaningful connections, because this tells me that we have probably 10% of students, 15% of students that otherwise could have a very meaningful connection to, at a minimum, a post-secondary experience such as an apprenticeship to get them connected into the workplace. Because what we also know is those apprenticeships come with some very high wage earning careers, and getting in that pipeline is important.
And this is perhaps a question that really can't be answered here, but how much of a barrier do we think that the 18-year-old minimum is for apprenticeships, given the fact that these kids are in WANIC programs from probably 16 on, 15 on? Would it benefit these students to be able to be in apprenticeships while they're in high school, during their WANIC programs, to really to create even a greater incentive? I love the fact that the construction union, that's a great story, and I love it and I applaud it. I'm just wondering if legislatively it might be of assistance to those students throughout the state, for that matter, to have that age lowered from 17 or 18 rather to 17 or 16, and if the trade unions are really interested in such a pipeline that start younger. I don't know. Maybe the liability situation is such. I don't know. But if we could look into that, that'd be great.
Evan.
All right, so I had my own commentary around the annual trends. So particularly looking at our students receiving special education and their four-year graduation rates, we have an annual trend of plus 2.2%, which is great, and we've highlighted that. But when you actually go back and look at the graph, if I'm understanding the calculation of the annual trend correctly, that centers our first data point on 2019, which was the first year of the pandemic, which we know disproportionately affected students receiving special education. And that shows in the graph. You go from 76.6% to 74.9%, and then 2019, 70.5%. It is a massive downward spike. And if that is our first data point when we're looking at the annual trend, of course it's going to look fantastic. So I'm concerned I don't want to say doing a victory lap, because I don't think that that's something that our district tends to do. We're pretty good about continuing to move forward on positive progress. But I'm concerned that specifically in this instance, I'm going to default to Director Carlson on the idea of an annual trend overall, but specifically in this instance, it's giving a very skewed view of what our services towards those students are, because the way I look at it, I'm looking at it as basically pre and post 2019, because that's where the spike is. We were on a downward slope beforehand, but fairly level. And afterwards, we are at it's literally level. We go from 78 to 77.8 to 77.9. It's basically the same thing. So if we're looking at beyond that one anomaly year, our trend isn't positive at all. And the reason I am focusing so hard on this is because, and clearly this is a much longer conversation for a much different time, but we've clearly heard our students outside today, and we've heard testimony that Servos program is disproportionately positively affecting students receiving special education. And so if I understand that maybe that program cannot exist budgetarily, but what else are we doing? Because the trend of the past 3 years, excluding that 2019 year, shows that we're not improving. We aren't backsliding, which is nice, but we aren't improving at all. And if we are going to cut a program that all the data shows is disproportionately positively affecting those students, and I'm sure if we continued it out to 4 years, would show a positive increase in graduation rates for those students, what else are we going to do to make up for that? So that's my first longer point. This second thing is a little bit more of a commentary. The PSAT metrics that we have here, this can be a rhetorical question unless it feels like it's worth answering. The 90 and 80% thresholds, the targets that we're trying to hit, are those arbitrary? Did that come from anything in specific? Because while I'm honestly a fan of the PSAT and SAT, I will say, particularly in this district, a lot of the students that are probably struggling on those tests are not really receiving any prior help beforehand. And as any student will tell you, a good 60% of the PSAT or the SAT is just knowing how to take the PSAT or SAT. So I'm not sure that those metrics are a very accurate reflection of our students' abilities, because again, as anyone will tell you, most of the struggle with those tests is just knowing how to take them. And from my experience, our students aren't being helped in knowing how to take them beforehand. So it doesn't surprise me that they're struggling.
Director Stewart.
There we go. In the special needs categories, we're looking at it, and we're looking at graduation rates. We are looking at graduation and not certificates of completion. Am I correct? Okay.
Correct.
Do we have stats on the certificates of completion, especially those who went through our academies?
So the certificate of completion is no longer offered.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
When did that end?
When they brought on the new graduation pathways.
Okay.
So
All right.
maybe 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Can I just also comment on the annual trend piece?
Yes.
This is not a pro or a con statement about the annual trends, but I also want to remind us that we all agreed to that as the methodology. And so this isn't something that my team came up with. It is something that we all came up with. And so we are the ones that are reporting this together the way it is being reported.
That is fair.
Thank you for recognizing that. Director Choi.
Evan's comments about the PSAT were interesting to me. As we have more secondary institutions that are getting rid of the requirement for SATs for acceptance into college, I see this as potentially even more not very informative in answering what we're trying to get to. And we're already looking at how many of our students are going into post-secondary education. So it does seem a little bit redundant.
So if I can just give a little history as to why it's even here. Part of it is because every 10th grader is given the opportunity to take the PSAT, and that just gives a marker in time in which to do so. You are absolutely right, Evan, that test training can be very impactful. I would also argue that if we are doing our job well within public education, whichever test is put in front of somebody, they should be able to at least reach the national standard as put forward. Because we should be teaching how to think, and so you can tackle tests in that way. So I do think, so but I will say just on the PSAT piece, that's some of the history of why it's there. It was a data point that was put in as a way to mark as we go to graduation, are they college and career ready? It's part of why the 9th grade question is there in regards to credits. We used to do 10th and 11th grade as well. So that is why the PSAT is there. Whether or not it should be there, I think that's a decision to make. It is clear that the gaps we even see within the PSAT align with the gaps we see in our other areas. So again, so I would argue you see multiple measures with similar gaps. So there's still more work to be done that we need to think about. That's not necessarily the indicator because all the gaps still exist in the same fashions. So I think, so whether or not we keep it and it's not useful, then yes, we can get rid of it. It can be added to what we do. I just want to make sure you knew the history of why the PSAT was there, because the SAT, we used to get the SAT and the ACT as an option. Wasn't beneficial because not every student took it. So at least with the PSAT, we had a much broader sampling of being able to get an idea as to where all our students were at and being able to speak to it that way and being able to use the college and career readiness cutoff that they use, which is significantly, we don't define that. So that's sort of an external source to be able to do a national comparison as well and to think about. So that's the reason behind it. Evan.
This is a bit of a tangent, but it struck me when Director Choi was talking about a lot of institutions, specifically on this side of the United States, kind of moving away from the PSAT and the SAT. From a student, I'm speaking as a student here, please, please, please do not get rid of in-school options for the PSAT and SAT, regardless of how schools in this area are continuing to move. I don't know if any of you have tried to get an SAT or an ACT living in like Washington School District in the past decade. It's not easy. I drove 2 hours for mine, and I got lucky and got one of the close ones. I know people that take ferries in hotels. I know we have at Juanita the Super Wednesday or something that we have there is such an incredible boon for students, because a lot of students, if we're thinking about equity, don't have the ability to take ferries and hotel rooms just to take an SAT. So it's not really related. I just wanted to make sure that was said. Please, 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 please keep that.
Very fair. Any other questions or comments in regards? Director Choi.
I just wanted to say I found the data when we broke out our multilingual students to students that are eligible versus previously eligible and then are never eligible. I found that data very helpful, actually, and interesting. Once again, going back to trend lines, just observing kind of the gaps. Right now, I was specifically focusing on the PSAT numbers, but just observing kind of the gaps between are currently eligible versus are once eligible. Once we can get students out of our multilingual services because they are proficient in their English, it seems like they have much greater rates of success within our schools across the board. So it is an interest to kind of focus on those students that are eligible, and maybe this is a study session that I need to request on multilingual services, but what percentage of our students never leave? Do we have a high success rate of moving our students through and getting them into their grade level classes?
I was just confirming that he understood your request, and he told me yes.
I think it's two things. One is how do we move students through? There's various data around that. And then it's also what's the service delivery model that we provide for students that as we're testing them, and I'm blanking on the name of the test because it changed a year ago, they're leveled. And so different levels of students, meaning their level of English proficiency, will receive a different type of service, knowing that core instruction, particularly for our youngest, is the best, most language-rich environment for them to learn. And so I think, I know you and President Bleasner are going to meet with Kelly Pease. That may be a good add to bring Julian Cortez, our Director of ML Services, into that conversation, because it really does go hand in hand how we're providing intervention supports for students.
Director Stewart.
As we look at our postgraduate numbers and those going into, whether it's 2 years or it's into the workforce, it might be a great measurement, I hope, to look at the students that go through our academies, our special needs students, and to see how many of those individuals end up with jobs after those 1 or 2 years in the academies. I think it would be a very, I would hope anyway, let's see, that it would be a very good number that we could be proud of. I know that before we even had the academies, there was a high school teacher over at Redmond High that basically broke ground on that sort of thing. And 4 of her graduates that she placed at Safeway from Perry Creek are still working there, and it's been 20 years. So I think it would be interesting to see if I think it might be helpful to the parents of the special needs students who are entering the academies or are considering the academies as a consideration when they're looking at that.
Any other additional comments or questions? So if I were to summarize a piece of what I've heard tonight, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure there will be gaps, and I do have notes, but what I'm hearing is there is reasonable progress with the noted exceptions in various subgroups. The one thing I would toss in that we haven't directly said is there is the piece that our Latino students are, I'm trying to think of the way in which to put it, the level at which being able to access either post-secondary or dual credit is not the same across the board. And I think that some additional understanding in that area would be of value. I think also the low-income students and potentially interplay of how that happens. Special education was also the group that came out pretty well. So do see a high graduation rate consistently. The data in general is well done in the sense of trends are a challenge. Perhaps many are flat, and COVID actually tosses in a whole nother contextual issue you have to pay attention to that could throw off if you have that as a starting point. I think that was sort of one of those points brought in there. I think there's interest in being able to understand how dual credit determination on some of the indicators as to whether or not the indicator of PSAT is of value and if that should be kept or not. Okay, what have I missed? I'm keeping that, so I have my summary already started. Chris?
Again, it's if you are going to keep the annual trend in the tables, I'm almost 90% certain that last year I asked that there be an explanation of how that number was calculated as part of the table. That there should be a footnote
I
saying how did
believe
they
it
get
was
that.
footnoted, because I swear
It's
I
not
read it.
footnoted in the tables in the.
Okay.
It's footnoted at the very beginning of the report. It's like listed as sub 5.
It should be footnoted with each of the tables, annual trend star, and at the bottom of that, it should be noted.
So there is a request that there is clear definition as to what years are included in the annual trend.
Only, the fact is, I still strongly believe that 4 years is not a meaningful trend, no matter how you
So this will be a
calculate
further discussion point.
it. So, yeah.
Similar to our conversation about results 2, I wonder if there's some refinement around results 1, because to your point, Chris, I've been looking at our 4-year graduation rate for a number of years, and it's impressive that it has just been this consistently slow stair step over the years. And I remember, back in the early 2010s, 2011s, 2012, starting to see this progress and wondering, is this a 1-year thing? And now to look back over 10 years to see that it has been year over year kind of consistently increasing. And so just kind of thinking about what's the data that will help the board answer the questions around reasonable progress. And if the annual trend isn't helping to answer that, then there's no reason for us to include it. And so that's a decision we can make. But in the absence of that, then what is the trend data that we're going to agree makes sense for maybe even each of these indicators, which may be different?
So I think some of your homework over the next 3 weeks till our next meeting, just to think about, is are there specific focus areas as you go through this and different things within here that you think, much as Director LaLiberty, you mentioned dual credit was a focus area. I think there has been some discussion around apprenticeships and alternative pathways. I shouldn't use the word alternative, other pathways. There's some disagreement, and that's something the board can work out to figure out which way they want to go with that. But I think thinking about, similar to what we did with R2, are there specific focus pieces we want to think about and do so? So just wanted to throw that out as some homework. Director Stewart first, then Director Carlson.
As much as I agree with the flat year-to-year data, I think that we're almost trapped into a situation where we need to capture that data on an ongoing basis and even report on it, merely because I think we have an audience of parents, of legislators, of community leaders that really probably have my level of understanding of graphs and charts, not yours. And they want to have the most current data, even when it's flat. But I think to Chris's point, the idea of emphasizing then, I wouldn't abandon it, is what I'm saying. I wouldn't abandon the annual reports, but I would then emphasize the segments of years that are more meaningful, just so we have both trends, if you will, while one is not a trend. But I have visions of somebody coming back at us 3 years from now and saying, well, why didn't you keep it for this year and that year and that year? What are you hiding? And we're not. It's just the fact that there's really no trend per se. It's fair. It's fair. Yeah, it's the nature of the public mindset of what we expect now. We expect ratings to go up from 1 week to the next in a news program, and that's crazy. So I think it's the same situation with your annual trends there.
So part of the reason I brought trends up is that that actually the slide being shown right now is a perfect example of it. I don't want to punish the administration for having a series of negatives in the annual trend. when I don't believe that those are meaningful trends. Just as I don't want to give credit where I don't perceive there to be a trend. The first place I noticed it was a slide where it was like, oh, and if you look, there's a plus 1.1. I was like, oh, hey, there's a minus 3.1 you didn't flag. Choose one. Either get credit or get punishment. I would rather commend the things that are moving. And there are a lot of ways that we can do this to communicate better to the public. And the terrible irony in all of this, and I truly do mean this seriously, even though it's going to sound funny, the most important book that your administrators can read in terms of presenting data is titled How to Lie with Statistics. And it's not about lying with statistics, it's about how do you communicate the message that you're trying to draw. And so if you can just do me a favor and skip back to the first graph of four-year grad rate for all students. If you're trying to communicate that to the public, how are we doing on our graduation rate? So that slide one after this guy, it's the next one. When you see this graph, it's on a scale of 0 to 100%, which makes it look like that's a pretty flat line. There's a big plateau. But if you plotted it as the inverse, what fraction of our kids are not graduating in 4 years? You would get more than 12% of our kids 10 years ago were not graduating in 4 years. Today, less than 6% of our kids. We have halved the rate of kids not graduating on time. That's a message, but unfortunately it's the same data. It's just how it is shown to try and communicate a message. So Mark is dead right. There are ways that we can communicate better, and we're trying to find a way to do it. But again, I'm absolutely not kidding. How to Lie with Statistics was written by a statistics professor trying to help kids interpret the front page of the newspaper. And it's absolutely fabulous in trying to help you find what's the real stories that we want to try and tell out of these data. And the first step is doing line graphs rather than bar charts. But we're there. Now the next step is to find the ways that the story is clear to someone who's a casual reader. And so I don't want my last message to be that you have failed. My last message is just that this is complex data. It's a very large system. And if you moved things dramatically in 1 year, as a professional scientist, my first reaction would be an anomaly. Somebody copied the wrong data into that cell, and it's just a mistake. This is just someone being human and assembling the table. Because it should be, if it's real, not a dramatic change, but it should be over a long period of time, a meaningful change. And so I, at the end of the day, do feel like important things are happening in these data. But it's really hard to get at which piece of that is the right piece. So I would donate my copy to the cause, but it's packed somewhere with my office. So.
The only other piece I would like to throw in that we haven't is student voice. And we actually talked about this at the board retreat in regards to stories and how you utilize different data, not just quantitative, but some of the qualitative data. You've started this somewhat with the survey in that one piece, but I do think when you think of what this actual result is about, is it's future ready for college, for the workplace, and for personal success. But we haven't asked our students ever if they believe that they are ready for those things. And so that is one that I would like to toss out as something we should be thinking about, of how do we bring that student voice into these for some of those stories as we spoke about, and being able to provide that. And Evan, I'm sure you can provide that, and Shivani, but I'm also thinking from a broader picture of, and perhaps that's through the survey, perhaps it's through groups of students, through multiple things, but I wanted to make sure that that's the one piece as I look through this that I get concerned I don't see. Anything else? Oh, Director Stewart.
To Evan's point about the prep being as important as the test, I can attest to that because God knows that they didn't have a prep class in my hometown, probably not for 200 miles from my hometown. But perhaps what we were looking at is an extracurricular club, if you will, to start looking on how to prep for the tests. Before, the kids who are from well-heeled families, it's a given. They're going to have the tutors. They're going to have the classes. From those that are anywhere from middle income down, or from those that are not familiar with it because college hasn't been a pathway, or because they were like myself, raised in an era where you won't find a prep class for love or money. So maybe what we're looking at is how do we take advantage of our rather robust extracurricular clubs and create such a preparation. Maybe funding through PTSA, maybe funding through the foundation. I don't know, but just let's think about it.
All right, so with that, I think we can close our discussion this evening. But your homework is to think. Is there focus areas specifically to the conversation you heard tonight and some of those things? And we can help to build that into the summary piece. And you will see this again on April 24th. But thank you for all the work. I didn't do that first, and I should have, and I apologize. I think there's been some great work. I do think you see a lot of those efforts. I think the credit retrieval work that you built in, you can sort of see some of that coming through in different ways, and those are key things that are highlighted through here. I'm not sure we captured that in our discussion tonight of some of the commendation components, but there definitely is excellent work that's going on. You do note things back to much above the pre-pandemic level, at least so we have lots of movement, and we do see all groups doing that as well. As always, there's more work to be done because that's sort of where we're at. But it might be interesting of how do we target that a little differently. And I think those points are brought up on how to do so. But thank you for all the work. Appreciated the additional components and the adding of some of the context into it. Thank you. And that concludes our last item of the evening. And so with that,
Move adjournment.
it has been moved by Director Lilburn and seconded by Director Carlson to adjourn our meeting. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, we are done. Thank you very much.